So the Usalama Project is going to last around 15 months. We are aiming at producing reports on 11 different armed groups, as well as 2 policy documents, 2 policy analyses. But that's only one part of our work. We also are trying to engage on a day-to-day basis, keep people informed on a day-to-day basis about the goings-ons in the Eastern Congo. So there's a blog that will be updated every week about developments in the Eastern Congo. There are multimedia that will be going up on our website with pictures of the main actors, profiles of the main actors, try to make things interesting for people, try to make people, draw people in and bring the color out. The organizational structure of these organizations. So we're really trying to provide, we're trying to be the go-to place for understanding the conflict in the Eastern Congo. I think the first thing we get out of this project is understanding. I don't think that we can do anything in the Eastern Congo without a better understanding of what's going on. I've been working in the Eastern Congo for a dozen years now, and I don't understand a lot of the stuff that's going on in the Eastern Congo. So I think the first thing is understanding that is a first principle for any of the above, for doing anything in the Eastern Congo that's constructive. The second thing is that yes, we obviously want to be able to influence policy. We want to try to give policymakers a better idea of how to tailor demobilization programs, engage in security sector reform, deal with armed groups, make them go away. But we're humble and modest in our ambition. We don't think that this project, or any other project for that matter, is going to be able to bring about peace in the Eastern Congo over in the next couple of years. The problems are entrenched, the problems are long-term. A lot of them have to do with processes that will take a long time to solve. State weakness, regional relations, the political dynamics. But I think that in order to do anything, in order to make progress in that direction at all, we need to understand better who is working here, who is behind these armed groups, why they exist. Well, if you want to create a very stark sort of black and white contrast or a dichotomy, I do think that there are 2 types of groups one can talk about. One can talk about groups that are rooted in the experience of the community, of the experience of the peasantry largely, with the poverty, the suffering, discrimination, marginalization. There are groups that spring up largely as local defense forces and that are very much rooted in the community, customary chiefs. Many of the Mai groups have this dynamic, even if those groups themselves go on and become interests of their own. And the other sort of extreme, if you will, are groups that were formed by political elites out of whole cloth, if you will, and are not terribly connected with communities. They're more rooted in those political elites that use them. Now, obviously, these are extremes. These are typologies. Neither of these really. The reality is, all groups are a mixture of both of those 2 things. But there are some groups that are closer to one, and some groups that are closer to the other. We are going to try to tease. I mean, that's I think if the end goal is to produce a document that's not only a historical document that teaches people, but also something that people can use to inspire policy, which is one of our goals. Your solutions are going to be very different for one group or the other. If the group is really just rooted in the local experience, it's really just about rank and file who are worried about security, who are worried about livelihoods, that's a very different solution you're going to tailor than if it's a group that is worried about protecting the large landholdings, the properties of the political interests of elites. Those are 2 very different solutions you're going to find. So I think that's where our interest in describing the historical and social context meets our policy goals. Dead groups are important. It's important to figure out why some groups have disappeared and haven't come back and other ones persist. Why has, for example, the CNDP been so difficult to engage with and to deal with and to integrate? Why have the Mai of General Padiri, which is another group we're looking at, why have they been much easier to engage with? And why have they disappeared and not come back? So I think we need to look at both conflict as well as the absence of conflict. That's one thing. Secondly, groups are very rarely dead and dusted. Even the ones that have disappeared, there are political networks that are behind these groups, business networks, social networks that are behind these groups that take a generation to go away. So even if a group looks like it's not there anymore, there's something that's behind it. There's something that's there. And so we're trying to tease out the sort of underlying social and political dynamics underneath these groups. There is a group, for example, in North Kivu that on the face of it, it doesn't exist anymore. Pareko does not exist anymore as an armed group. But many of the political networks that were behind it, that formed around it, people that supported it, they're still there. And they could come back again. There could be an armed group formed again in the very near future. Why not? We have to come to terms with the fact that Congo is complex and there's no way of reducing it to one single narrative. The curse of the Congo is its complexity. The reasons that many people have thrown up their hands and said the Congo's unfixable, irredeemable, is because of the complexity. I think first of all we have to come to terms with the fact and just realize we're not going to be able to explain it with a one-liner or with one person or with one group. It is complex. Secondly, how do you explain these groups? Yeah, I mean, I think that the way we're trying to go about it is, you know, we're going to show the complexity and all the things I laid out, land conflict and interests of political elites, but we're also going to tell the human story. I mean, the human story is an incredibly important and vital part to this. So we're going to try to bring it alive to people. The stories behind armed groups are not only tragic stories, but they're also very compelling and dramatic stories. So there is, I think, a very compelling, you know, we're going to piece together the meetings, the conspiracies that gave birth to these various groups. So I think it's going to be, there's going to be very strong narratives.